I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel and like this video. My goal is to reach the first 1,000 subscribers. Thank you and enjoy. Before I get into this, here's the point of telling it. A lot of guys don't lose their marriage in one big explosion. They lose it in small permissions. A cold reply here. A little public joke there. A new rule that only goes one direction. And if you keep negotiating your dignity, you'll wake up living in a house where you pay for everything and get treated like an inconvenience. This story is about catching those early signals and responding with calm, adult moves, changing access, changing schedules, changing expectations, without turning into a detective or a doormat. Not drama, not speeches, just consequences. The night Rachel brought up boundaries, she did it like she was reading from a card. We were in the kitchen. I had a plate in one hand, the faucet running. She leaned on the counter, phone face down for once, and stared past me like she was waiting for a cue. I need personal boundaries, she started, and the right to personal space. No lead up, no argument, no reason. I shut the water off and looked at her. Rachel, are you arguing with me right now? Or rehearsing for somebody? Her eyes narrowed. See? That. You pressure me. I let out a quiet laugh, the kind you do when something clicks and it's not funny at all. I'm not pressuring you. I'm listening, and I'm making conclusions. She scoffed. Wow. So you're turning this into some accusation. I'm turning it into a schedule, I replied, sliding the plate into the rack. Because starting today, you don't get me on demand. That was the first time her face changed. Not hurt, not sad, annoyed, like I'd moved the furniture without asking. If I'd known where it was headed, I would have moved a lot more than furniture a lot sooner. The next morning, I adjusted my week like I was adjusting a business plan. Saturday plans? Gone. At lunch, I texted her, Saturday's off. I've got my own things. She called within 10 seconds, like the message had slapped her. You're canceling? She demanded. I'm rescheduling my life, I answered. There's a difference. What is wrong with you? Nothing. That's the point. You're being petty. No, I'm being clear. Petty is emotional. Clear is logistical. She made that little exhale she used when she wanted to signal I was exhausting. So what? You're punishing me. I paused at a red light, calm as ever. Rachel, if I was punishing you, you'd know it. This is me taking care of my time. She went quiet, then tried a softer tone, like she'd switched scripts. I just want us to be okay. Then act like it, I replied. Because you don't get to ask for space and then complain I'm not nearby. That afternoon, I also split our household expenses. Not in a dramatic announcement. I changed what came from my account and what didn't. Mortgage, utilities, basics, handled. Her personal spending and her fun categories? Her lane now. I sent a short message with a simple breakdown. She responded with, seriously? I sent back, seriously. When I got home, she was sitting on the couch with her laptop open, phone in hand, and that look on her face like she was chewing on a plan. So you're cutting me off, she said. I'm separating responsibilities, I corrected. You wanted independence. Congratulations. That's not what I meant. That's what you asked for. She stood up, slow and deliberate. You love control, Holden. I raised an eyebrow. Funny. I didn't control anything today. I just stopped sponsoring confusion. She walked past me and brushed my shoulder like it was a power move. You're going to regret this. I watched her disappear down the hall and thought, yeah, regret is usually what people threaten when they're losing leverage. 2 days later, we went to Dan's place for a barbecue. Dan's one of those guys who keeps his yard like a golf course, and his parties are always loud in a safe, suburban way. Couples, kids, lawn chairs, somebody always trying to prove they know how to grill. Dan met us at the gate with a spatula in his hand. Holden, my man. Rachel. Hey. Rachel smiled for him. She could still do that. She had a warm smile. She just didn't spend it at home anymore. We made small talk. I grabbed a soda, listened more than I spoke. Rachel floated around like she was the host, laughing at things that weren't funny, tapping her phone like it was a pet. Dan's wife, Tessa, leaned toward me while Dan argued about charcoal with another guy. You okay? She asked quietly. I'm fine, I told her. Just observing. She gave me a look like she understood more than she wanted to. A little later, we were all near the patio table, plates in hand. Dan was telling a story about a work project, and Rachel interrupted with a bright laugh. Oh my God, she said, loud enough for everyone. Holden loves control. He'd have a schedule for breathing if he could. A couple people chuckled, that polite social chuckle. Dan's smile froze like he'd stepped on a rake. I set my plate down and turned to her. No heat, no performance, just eye contact. If you've decided to do a show, I told her, do it. Just leave my name out of it. She blinked, like she didn't expect me to respond in public. Dan cleared his throat fast. Hey, speaking of schedules, who's watching the game later? Rachel tilted her head, acting amused. See? Too sensitive. I shrugged. Sensitive would be me begging you to stop. I'm not begging. I'm informing you. Tessa's eyes widened slightly. Dan stared at the grill like it had suddenly become fascinating. Rachel leaned closer, smiling for the crowd. Okay. Mr. Boundaries. Exactly, I replied. Now you're learning the vocabulary. The conversation stumbled forward, but the mood shifted. Rachel hated that. She hated losing control of the room. She spent the rest of the barbecue being extra charming to everybody else, like she was building an audience. On the drive home, she stared out the window, jaw tight. You embarrassed me, she finally said. I kept my eyes on the road. You tried to embarrass me. It didn't land. That's not the same problem. You could have laughed. I don't laugh when someone tries to downgrade me in front of my friends. She let out another exhale. You're exhausting. I smiled a little. And you're suddenly very interested in my emotional management. Noted. At home, she went straight to the bedroom and closed the door a little too hard. I slept fine. 2 days after that, I was leaving for a work trip. Early flight. I was hauling my bag to the car when I ran into Melissa, my neighbor. Melissa is the kind of woman who talks like her brain is in a sprint. Late 30s, always in a hurry, always in leggings, always carrying groceries like she's mad at them. Nice person. Zero filter. Holden, she called, waving a hand with a bag of oranges. You heading out again? Couple days, I answered, loading my bag into the trunk. She came closer, nodding like she was collecting data. Rachel home. Yeah. She said she'd be in tonight. I replied. Melissa made a face, not dramatic, just casual. Oh, weird. I paused. What's weird? She shrugged. I saw her last night, that's all. Over by the shopping center. Getting into a taxi. The oranges almost slipped out of her bag. She caught them. Anyway, maybe she just didn't want to drive. Not my business. I just noticed because I was like, oh, that's Holden's wife. I looked at her for a second, letting the words settle. Last night. Yeah, like maybe 8-ish. Melissa said, then laughed. Don't worry, I'm not starting drama. I just noticed. I kept my voice even. Melissa, did she look like she was coming from the grocery store? Melissa thought about it. No. She was dressed up. Like, nicer than Target, you know? I nodded once. Got it. Melissa's smile faded a little. You okay? Yeah, I told her, and it wasn't a lie. You didn't start anything. You just confirmed something. What did I? Nothing. I cut in gently. Have a good one. I got in the car, closed the door, and sat there for a full 10 seconds without starting the engine. Because Rachel had texted me that same night. I'm home alone. Early night. Long day. And Melissa didn't even realize she'd hit a button. But I did. That whole space conversation, it wasn't about me. It was practice. A script. A cover story somebody else needed her to keep clean. I didn't panic. I didn't start calling people. I did what I always do when something smells off. I went quiet. I went methodical. On the trip, I kept communication boring. Short replies. No emotional hooks. When she texted, "Miss you," I responded, "Hope you're doing well." That irritated her. I could feel it through the screen. Then she tried the first illusion. Second night of my trip, she called and her voice was suddenly soft. Warm. Almost familiar. I made you lunch for tomorrow, she said. It's in the fridge. And I'm sorry I've been snappy. I leaned back in the hotel chair, looking at the bland wall art. That's considerate. There was a pause. That's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say? I asked. A sandwich doesn't erase patterns. Holden, I'm trying. Trying looks like consistency, I replied. Not a surprise peace offering after you get pushback. Her tone sharpened for half a second. Then she softened again, like she was forcing it. I just don't want us to drift. I smiled to myself. Then stopped rowing in the opposite direction. When I got back home, the lunch was there. Neat container. A note. Cute handwriting. It would have been sweet if it wasn't timed like a tactic. I ate it anyway. I'm a grown man. I don't punish food. But I didn't reward it, either. That weekend, she tried to pull me back into our old rhythm. Brunch, errands, a couple's day. She planned it like she owned my calendar. We'll do brunch at 11, she announced Friday night, scrolling on her phone. Then we can look at that furniture set. I found a place. I didn't even look up from my laptop. I'm not doing brunch. She blinked. What? I'm meeting Dan, I said. And then I'm taking the kid to my brother's for the afternoon. Our kid, she corrected sharply. I nodded. Exactly. And I'm handling it. She crossed her arms. You don't just decide things without me. I finally looked at her. Rachel, you decided a lot without me lately. I'm just catching up. That's not fair. No, I agreed. It's accurate. She stepped closer, voice lower. Who are you meeting? I leaned back. Does it matter? Or is this only about control when it's not you holding it? She stared at me, lips pressed tight. You're being impossible. Good, I replied. Impossible men don't get used. The next day, I met Dan at a local shop where he liked to tinker on his truck. He rented a bay there sometimes. It smelled like tools and old oil, and Dan looked relieved the second I walked in. You good? He asked, wiping his hands. I'm functional, I told him, which is better than most people deserve. He gave me a look. Rachel's been sharp. Sharp is fine, I replied. Sharp is honest. What she's doing is strategic. Dan leaned on the workbench. You think she's got something going on? I kept my face neutral. I think she's lying. And I think she's comfortable doing it. Dan nodded slowly. I hate to say it, but there's a guy in the circle who's been acting weird. Which guy? I asked, still calm. Dan hesitated. That hesitation told me plenty. Say it, I told him. Dan exhaled. Kyle. Kyle. The friendly one. The guy who was always available to help move a couch. Always texting jokes in the group chat. Always calling everyone brother like it was a religion. Kyle had been in my house. He'd held my kid once, bouncing him on his knee like he belonged there. I stared at Dan. How weird. Dan scratched the back of his neck. He's been asking about you. Your schedule. When you're traveling. Stuff like that. I nodded once slow. Of course he has. Dan's eyes widened. You already knew. I didn't know, I corrected. I recognized the shape. Dan looked sick. Man, I'm sorry. I waved it off. Don't apologize. You didn't do it. But you are going to help me close a loop. Dan swallowed. What do you need? Nothing illegal. Nothing dramatic, I said. Just information. Dates. Where he's been. When he's gone quiet. Dan nodded. I can do that. That was my initiative on someone else's territory. Not a confrontation. A repositioning. I wasn't asking permission anymore. I was building a timeline. When I got home, Rachel was in the kitchen again, like the universe had lazy writing. She glanced at me and smiled. Too bright. Hey, I was thinking we should do a little weekend trip soon. I set my keys down. No. Her smile faltered. No, I'm not investing in distractions, I replied. Her eyes flashed. You're punishing me again. I'm avoiding being played, I corrected. She set her phone on the counter, face down again. Holden, you're acting like I'm some kind of enemy. I stepped closer, voice steady. Then stop acting like you need an enemy narrative to justify your behavior. Her jaw tightened. I've been stressed. So have I replied. Difference is, I don't use stress as a license. She leaned forward. I told you I need space. And I gave it to you, I answered. Now you're mad I'm not standing outside the door waiting. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She wasn't used to me not filling the silence with explaining. The next morning, I got a message from Dan. A couple timestamps, I saw Kyle leaving early, and one key detail. Kyle had been skipping the group's weekly meetups on the exact nights Rachel had been home early. That was enough. I didn't need to catch anyone in a movie scene. I didn't need to burst into a restaurant. I needed clarity and clean decisions. So when Rachel texted that afternoon, can we talk tonight? Like really talk? I replied, sure. 8. I didn't tell her that I'd already arranged for someone to be with our kid for the evening. I didn't tell her I'd asked a lawyer to sit in. I didn't tell her I had my laptop open with a simple table, assets, expenses, dates, notes. Not gossip, not feelings, facts. At 8, she came into the living room with that careful face people use when they plan to steer the conversation. She sat, legs crossed, hands folded. I don't want us to be hostile. Then don't bring hostility, I replied, gesturing toward the chair across from me. Her eyes flicked to the lawyer when he stepped in behind me. Middle-aged, calm, wearing the kind of suit that says, I've seen every version of this. Rachel froze. What is this? This is me taking you seriously, I told her. That's insane, she snapped. You don't bring a lawyer to a marriage conversation. You don't bring secret rules into a marriage either, I answered. She tried to stand, then sat again, like her legs couldn't decide. I just wanted to talk about feelings. Feelings are fine, I replied. But feelings don't rewrite reality. She pointed at my laptop. And that is what? A spreadsheet? Are you kidding me? I'm not kidding, I said, opening it and turning it toward her. I'm organized. The lawyer stayed quiet, letting me drive. That mattered. This was my boundary, not his show. Rachel leaned in, eyes scanning. Then her face changed. She wasn't shocked at the categories. She was shocked at the numbers. Her voice went small. Why is my share like that? I kept it plain. Because for 8 months you've been redirecting effort and resources while trying to keep the comfort the same. I adjusted. I documented. I stopped bleeding. She looked up fast. You can't do that. I already did, I replied. Her eyes narrowed, and she tried a different angle. Anger. So you've been plotting. I've been responding, I corrected. Quietly, like an adult. She glanced at the lawyer. This is humiliating. I smiled thin. Interesting. You care about humiliation now. She breathed hard through her nose. Holden, you don't understand. Stop. I cut in, holding up a hand. No speeches. You wanted privacy and space. You got it. You used it. Now you don't like the invoice. She stared at the screen again, fingers gripping the armrest. This isn't fair. I nodded once. Fair is when both people respect the rules. You wanted special rules. Special rules come with special outcomes. For a second, she looked like she might actually cry. Then she caught herself. She wasn't sad about us. She was scared of losing control. That night ended with her saying, I need time, and me answering, time is over. She didn't sleep in our bed. I didn't care. 2 days later, she tried the second illusion, and she brought our kid like a prop. I came home to find her standing on the porch with him, holding a little bag with snacks. She'd done his hair. She had that soft smile on, like she was auditioning for a commercial. Hey, she said gently. He missed you. I crouched down and opened my arms. Come here, buddy. He ran into me, and I picked him up, solid and warm and real. That part of my life wasn't a bargaining chip. Rachel watched, eyes shining. See? We can still be a family. I stood up, still holding him. We will always be his family. That doesn't mean we stay in the same house. Her smile trembled. Holden, please. I kept my voice calm. Don't please me with an audience. She swallowed. I brought dinner. Your favorite. I'll eat, I said. And then I'm taking him for a couple hours. Her eyes widened. Where? Out, I replied. He gets time with his dad without tension in the air. She tried to follow, stepping off the porch. We should talk while he's... No, I interrupted. Tonight isn't for you. Tonight is for him. She froze like I'd slapped her with a rule. We went to a small park, grabbed food, sat at a picnic table, built a little plastic model kit I'd picked up on the way. He laughed when I messed up a piece on purpose and pretended it was broken forever. It was normal. It was clean. When I brought him back, he hugged me hard and ran inside. Rachel stayed at the door, blocking it slightly with her shoulder. You were nice tonight, she said, like she was testing the water. I'm always nice to my kid, I replied. She lowered her voice. Can we just reset? I'll do better. I looked at her, steady. Rachel, your better shows up whenever you feel the ground moving. That's not better. That's management. Her eyes flicked away. You're so cold. I nodded. Cold is what happens when you burn respect. She stared at me for a long beat, then tried one last angle, sweetness. I miss you. I offered a polite half-smile. Miss me responsibly. Then I stepped back, letting the door close. No argument. No negotiation. The next week, I executed the part she didn't see coming because she was too busy trying to regain leverage. I'd already found an apartment. Quiet building. Clean lease. Close enough to be present for my kid, far enough to breathe. I'd moved my essentials into storage in small batches, like a man who doesn't need a marching band to make a decision. Rachel noticed a couple missing things: a jacket, a toolbox, some documents. Where's your... She started one night. Handled, I replied. Handled how? By me. She stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Then came the kill moment. Not a dramatic scene, just a fact that landed like a brick. Dan called me while I was in the driveway. Holden, he said, voice tight. Kyle's at the shopping center right now. I just saw him. And Rachel's car is there too. I didn't react with noise. I reacted with movement. Thanks, I told him. That's enough. I hung up, walked into the house, and found Rachel in the kitchen again. Of course, scrolling her phone like it was the only thing that still smiled at her. I'm moving out, I said plain. Her head snapped up. What? I'm leaving, I repeated. The date is set. The lawyer knows. Logistics are already in motion. Her face went pale, then hot. You can't just. I can, I replied. And I did. She stood up fast. This is because of your paranoia. I tilted my head. Paranoia is when there's nothing there. I have dates. I have patterns. I have lies. And I have the courtesy to not pretend I'm stupid. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You don't have proof. I smiled slightly. Proof is for people who still want to argue. I don't. She stepped toward me, voice rising. So you're just going to abandon us? I kept my tone level. I'm not abandoning my kid. I'm exiting your game. She jabbed a finger toward my chest. You're doing this to hurt me. I looked down at her finger like it was something stuck to my shirt. No, you got hurt because your plan required me to stay unaware. That's not my obligation. Her eyes went glossy. Holden, please. You're overreacting. I nodded. That's the word people use when they run out of control. She tried to shift again, softer. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can. No, I cut in. One conversation with facts was enough. You don't get a second round just because the first didn't go your way. Her voice cracked. What do you want from me? I picked up my keys off the counter. I want you to stop trying to negotiate respect like it's a coupon. She followed me to the hallway. You can't do this. I stopped, turned, and kept it simple. Rachel, you wanted space. You wanted privacy. You wanted independence. I'm granting it in full. She stared at me, breathing fast, like she wanted me to explode so she could point at it and feel right. I didn't give her that. The move was quiet. No screaming. No furniture thrown. Just a truck, a couple friends, and my things leaving in a clean line. Dan showed up without being asked, jaw tight, eyes apologetic. Tessa came too, not to comfort me, but to make sure Rachel didn't try anything messy. Rachel stood in the doorway like a statue, arms crossed, trying to look unbothered. But her eyes kept flicking to the boxes like each one was a bill coming due. This is really happening, she said. I nodded. Yes. She tried one last small jab, voice shaky. Good luck controlling your new life. I looked at her, almost amused. It won't need controlling. It'll need standards. I walked to my truck, then turned back for the final line, the one that ended it clean. You can keep your space, I told her. Just don't try to rent mine again. Then I got in and drove off. A few months later, my life got simpler in all the right ways. The apartment was quiet. My work improved because I wasn't carrying chaos home like a second job. I had my kid on a steady schedule, and when he came over, the place felt calm, not tense. I started taking care of myself again. Gym, sleep, decent meals, actual weekends that didn't revolve around managing someone else's mood. I also met someone new through a coworker, Jenna. Straightforward woman. No games. If she had an issue, she said it. If she appreciated something, she showed it. We took it slow because I don't sprint into anything anymore. But I'll say this. Being with an adult who respects you feels almost boring at first. In a good way. Rachel? I only hear bits. She still tries to present a shiny version of her life. But the comfort she was protecting slipped through her fingers the moment she lost control of my resources and my attention. She's not the center of my world now. She's a logistical contact and nothing more. And that's exactly where she earned herself. Here's what I took from it, and what I'd tell any man who's watching his home turn cold. First lesson, when someone suddenly demands space and privacy out of nowhere, don't panic and don't beg. Listen, then adjust access. I didn't argue about her phone. I didn't interrogate. I changed my schedule, canceled shared plans, and stopped being available on command. That alone revealed what she really valued: connection or control. Second lesson, public disrespect is a test. The barbecue joke wasn't humor. It was a status move. If you laugh it off, you train everyone, including her, that you're safe to downgrade. I didn't yell. I set a rule in front of witnesses. Do your show, leave my name out. Calm boundaries in public changed the whole power dynamic. Third lesson, facts beat endless conversations. The mistake would have been explaining myself for weeks, trying to win understanding from someone who was building a narrative where I'm difficult, and she's independent. I brought structure, numbers, timelines, decisions already made. Once you're dealing with someone who changes rules mid-game, you don't keep playing. You win the match. Respect is worth more than the comfort of pretending everything's fine. And the strongest move isn't a loud one. It's deciding, quietly, clearly, and walking out like a man who knows exactly what he's worth. That's the end of the story. And since you're here, you must have enjoyed it. Why not subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future videos? Thanks, and have a nice day.